Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. So today we're going to learn something very exciting. We're going to learn about the 10 Sefirot, and this is one of the major concepts in Kabbalah. And I want to use a mushal. So first we're going to start with how the Makublim, how the Kabbalists, how do they view Hashem? So they call Hashem the Ein Sof, meaning without end, meaning an infinite being. So in reality, like Hashem is this infinite being that's beyond time and space. He created all time and space. He's beyond... he's a perfect, infinite being, and we really can't understand the essence of who Hashem is in his pure essence, but what Hashem's done in his creation, he's given us a way to understand him. So I want to use a mushal, and I want to compare Hashem to a computer programmer. So the first thing the programmer does is he comes up with a plan, and then he writes the source code for the whole operating system. So the source code is the Torah. The Torah is the source code, and that is the blueprint for all creation. So then Hashem created all the end users. He created us. He created people. So then he wants a way to communicate with us, and he wants a way that, according to our actions, like Hashem can change like how the Messias, how the reality of the world is according to what we're doing. So what Hashem does is he creates these Sephirot, and they act as kind of this spiritual circuit board that's connecting us and Hashem. It's a way for Hashem to send a spiritual influence into the world through the Sephirot, and it's a way through our actions to send back, our actions will create, they'll send messages back through this circuit board, and then it'll affect the way the world is. So the Torah is the source code. Now, the 613 mitzvos, the Torah explains how to do the mitzvos, and each one of these mitzvos is like an app in this mushal. So when you do one of the mitzvahs, you activate a certain portion of the source code. Now then, Hashem's also given us tefillah. So he's given us the ability to pray, and then we can send messages up the circuit board back to Hashem. So the Sephirot also act in another way as kind of like a user interface. It's 10 ways that Hashem interacts with us. Like Hashem can interact with the sphere of chesed, and he can give love and kindness into the world. Or if there's judgment or din, if Chas v'Shalom people are doing aveiros, then he can act through Gevurah and send din and judgment into the world. And there's just 10 different ways. And we'll discuss all these different aspects of the 10 Sefirot and how the whole circuit board works. And when we understand these 10 Sefirot, it helps us in our relationship with Hashem, and it also helps us in our relationship with other people. So we will dive right in, and we'll see how all this stuff works. The top three of the Sefirot, Keser, Chachma, and Bina, are the spiritual root of the powers of intelligence and the intellect. So Keser represents crown, and Chachma is wisdom, and Bina is understanding. And when there's a balance between Chachma and Bina, then it creates this third Sephirah called Das, which means knowledge. Today we're going to get a lot of our information from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan from his translation and commentary on Sefer Yetzirah and his other Sefer Innerspace. I hope you enjoy. So the first Sephirah is Keter, or in Ashkenazi Keser, and it means the crown. So the pasuk mentions it in the Torah is when Hashem tells Betzalel how to create all the kelim for the Mishkan, for instance, the Ark of the Covenant, the Shulchan, the table of the breads, the menorah. So the pasuk is V'amale oso ruach Elokim b'chakma uv'savuna uvdas ubekol molacha. So it's in Shmos, Lamed Aleph Gimel, so it's in the book of Exodus 31:3. And there, Ruach Elokim relates to the Sephirah of Keser, or Keter, and then it mentions Chachma, and then Tavuna is Bina, and then Das. So in Sefer Yetzirah, in the first chapter and the second Mishnah, it says, Eser Sephirot B'lima. So it's 10 Sephirot of nothingness. So what that means is that the Sephirot, they don't have any physical substance. They're purely spiritual. They're purely ruchnius. And they can only be interacted with in a higher spiritual world. So a person would have to go into a meditative state and basically separate themselves from the physical world And during meditation, the physical senses are turned off, and then the neshama, a person's soul, can interact with the spiritual worlds of Asiya and Yetzirah and Bariah. And Earth is the lowest sefira of the world of Asiya. So Earth is the Sephirot, the lowest one of Malchus. So the world of Asiya contains the physical world on the lowest level and then has a spiritual component above that. So Keter is called Ein, meaning nothingness. Now, since Hashem is everything, anything that comes close to Hashem is considered nothingness compared to the pure essence of Hashem, which is the pure essence of existence. So Keter is also known as Ani, which means I, because it's the first creation closest to Hashem's essence. So Keter is the highest interface between the infinite and his creations, and it is hidden and it's incomprehensible, and it shares some of the qualities of infinity. So it's a crown resting on the head, but it's not part of the body. The second Sephirah is Chakma, which means wisdom. And Chakma relates to the right side of the brain. So it's the spiritual root of the brain's intellect. And what it does is it draws down original ideas and thoughts before being broken down into understanding by Bina. So all thoughts of inspiration and discovery come through Chakma. And Chakma is related to the Yud of Hashem's name, and it's considered a male aspect, a Zachar, which relates it to Zechira, which means memory, and it represents the past. So it gives raw thoughts and ideas to Bina to be contemplated and then understood. And Chakma is the blueprint that Hashem created the entire spiritual and physical universe into existence. And it's the active intellect that Hashem uses to run the universe. The third of the Sephiros is Bina, which means understanding. And Bina relates to the left side of the brain, and it's the spiritual root of the brain's ability to understand. So it receives thoughts and ideas from Chakma, and then contemplating them and examining and reviewing them until the ideas are fully understood. So Bina is related to the first He in Hashem's name, and is always connected to the Yud of Chakma. So Bina is an Akeva, it's female, and it's Nikev, it pierces the future. So the wisdom of the past can help us to pierce the veil of the future. And it's through the power of Bina that we can begin to understand the universe and ourselves. The 7 lower Sephiros are the powers of emotion. And the first of the 7 lower Sephiros is Chesed, which is the 4th of the Sephiros overall. So Chesed means love and kindness. So the 7 lower Sephiros, they parallel the 7 days of creation, the Maisa Bereshis. The Torah begins and ends with Chesed. Hashem makes clothes for Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, even after they eat from the tree of knowledge, even after they eat from the Eitz Das Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Hashem has a kindness and mercy on them, and it makes them clothes. And the Torah ends with Hashem bearing Moshe Rabbeinu, bearing Moses. And burying the dead is what's called a chesed shel emes. It's true kindness, because the person you bury can never repay you for the favor. So Abraham is the living version of chesed. Abraham and his wife Sarah, they lived in a tent that was open on all 4 sides. And they gave food and drink to travelers from all directions. So through love and kindness, they taught the knowledge of Hashem and His Torah to many students. And the act of creation itself, and Hashem sustaining the world every moment, is the ultimate act of chesed, the ultimate act of kindness. Hashem gives to all of His creations, and there is nothing we can give back to an infinite being that doesn't lack anything. So chesed is the spiritual root of the right arm, which is used to give tzedakah and to lift people up. The 5th of the Sephiros is Gevura, which means strength or self-control. So in Pirkei Avot, Ben Zoma, he asks, who is strong? And the answer is that a person who can control his own desires. So Gevura parallels the 2nd day of creation. And Hashem creates the Rikiah on the 2nd day, and is separating between the upper and the lower waters. So Gevura is the power of boundaries and restraint. Yitzhak, Isaac, is the living version of Gevura. He allowed himself at the age of 37 to be bound for sacrifice at the Akedah by his father Abraham. And he had the strength to continue his father Abraham's teachings. He continued Abraham's teachings about Hashem and his Torah. He redug the wells filled in by the police team. And the wells, water usually represents these wells of Torah. Those physical wells that Hashem created to do kindness for travelers so they'll have water. And it also means the wells of Torah, teaching them the wisdom of the Torah. So Gevurah is the spiritual root of the left arm, which is used to hold back and to push away and restrain. The sixth of the Sephirot is Tiferes, which means harmony or beauty and truth. So Tiferes is a balance between the outward giving of love and kindness of Chesed and the inward self-control and restraint of Gevurah. So Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, is the living example of Tiferes, which is emes, which is truth. So the Gemara defines a truthful person as what is outside is what is inside. A person can be true and real if he is balanced. So Yaakov sees Rachel, he sees Rachel, he sees her great midos, and he loves her instantly. So Yaakov and Rachel and Leah, they had 12 sons. And each one of these sons grew up to be a tzaddik. And each one of the sons formed one of the 12 tribes of Yisrael, the Jewish people of Israel. So when Yaakov sees his brother Esav will not follow in the ways of Yitzhak and Isaac and Abraham and Abraham's ways, he buys the birthright from him because he knows that it wouldn't be truth. It wouldn't be emes if Esav were to still possess the birthright. So Yaakov is able to wrestle and defeat the malach of the Yetzer Hara and defeat it, the actual spiritual force of evil in the world. So Tiferes is the spiritual root of the chest, which is in the middle of the right and the left arm, and it's the balance between Chesed and Gevurah. The seventh of the Sephirot is Netzach, which means victory, eternity, and dominance. So Netzach takes Chesed to a higher level. If a person constantly gives love and kindness, they can win another person over. So Netzach is it's also about establishing a long-term kindness that approaches eternity. So a person can give tzedakah to another person who's in need of money, and it'll help them out instantly. But Netzach is teaching another person a skill, where the other person can now earn money on their own. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is a living example of Netzach. So Moshe went up to Shemayim, he went up to heaven 3 times for 40 days and 40 nights, a total of 120 days and nights, while he was still alive, and bring the Torah down to the Jewish people. So this is a great example of eternal love and kindness. Through the Torah, we are forever attached to Hashem, the infinite creator. The relationship of Netzach and Hod, in terms of a marriage, is giving your full being to your wife and receiving your wife's full being. The eighth of the Sephirot is Hod, which means empathy or splendor. So Hod takes Gevurah to a higher level. When a person gains control over his emotions and desires, he can give himself completely, and he can have empathy for someone else. So a person takes themselves out of the equation and it leaves room to feel empathy for other people. So Aaron HaKohen is the living example of Hod. So Aaron, so his empathy allowed him to help restore Shalom Bayis. He restored marriages between many husbands and wives who were fighting. So Aaron's total giving allowed him to serve Hashem with a pure heart in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple. A marriage of a husband and wife is a balance of Netzach and Hod. It is the ability of the husband to fully share himself with his wife, and then the ability to fully receive herself with him. So the motions of marital intimacy represent the balancing back and forth of Netzach and Hod, while the final cessation of motion is the balance of Yesod. The ninth of the Sephirot is Yesod, which means foundation. It acts as a foundation to build a structure on top of. So the Torah teaches of the great love between Yaakov and Rachel, between Jacob and Rachel. So this great love gave birth to their son, Yosef HaTzadik, to Joseph. Now Yosef is the living example Yesod. So a tzaddik is the foundation of the whole world. The tzaddik guards his purity, his tahara, and his innocence by abstaining from all forbidden physical relationships. Yesod represents the most powerful bond that can exist between a husband and a wife. Yesod is also the ultimate spiritual attachment between man and Hashem. So Yesod is where the spiritual flow comes into the physical world, and Yesod is the power for a husband and wife to join together in a partnership with Hashem to form new life. The 10th and final of the Sephirot is Malchus, which means kingship or royalty. Malchus parallels the 7th day of creation, which is Shabbos, Shabbat. So Malchus receives everything from the 6 Sephirot above it, from Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. So Shabbos also receives everything created on the 6 days of the week. Hashem is the ultimate giver. He sends a spiritual energy down through the Sephirot circuit board, and Chesed gives no matter what the consequences. Gevurah holds back, not giving anything. Tiferes finds a balance between Chesed and Gevurah of the best way to give. Netzach gives according to the giver's needs, and Hod gives according to the receiver's needs. Yesod finds a balance to give in the best way for both the giver and the receiver. And Malchus is the Sephirot that receives the refined giving. On Shabbos, we can receive the fruit of all our physical and spiritual work we did during the week. So King David HaMelech, King David, is the living example of Malchut. Malchut must receive and then transform into a giver. The king has nothing of his own. He receives everything from his people. Then the king gives whatever the people need to serve Hashem. David HaMelech, King David, as Malchut, united the people and all the Sephirot. And one day, Bezrat Hashem, soon, we will see his descendant, Mashiach, the son of David HaMelech, the son of King David, come and unite the whole world.